Listen to the vibes.
The views and opinions of our guests may not necessarily reflect those of the host or the Vibes Broadcast Network. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. And I'm very privileged to have Miss Julie DeLuca Collins here with me. And she is a tiny habits coach. Now, I have not heard that one yet, so you're going to have to expand on it for me. But before we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Kyle, thank you so much for having me, and it is a pleasure to be here. I love to be able to connect with other incredible podcasters out into the universe who are really sharing lots of really great content. Let's see, what can I tell you about me? Well, I had a very successful corporate career. After 20 years, I was laid off, and I knew that I was going to go in this direction. It came much sooner than I anticipated, and I launched my own business. I'm a business and life strategy coach, but I am Tiny Habits certified. And I live in Connecticut with my husband, who is my producer for my podcast, Casa DeConfidence. And I'm also an author and speaker. But one of the things that I love the most is really working with women and helping them build the life and business that they want. And I do that through using mental fitness and tiny habits. Tiny Habits is a book that was written by Dr. B.J. Fogg. And unlike some of the other habit books that you may come across, Dr. Fogg is the leading researcher on habits and behavioral change. He has been doing research on what does it take to create a habit and behavior change in Stanford University for over 20 years. And one of the things that he has found is that we cannot rely on motivation to change a behavior or to create a habit. It doesn't take 10 days, 21 days, 66 days. That doesn't work. The reality is that if something is hard, then when the motivation goes away, you're not going to want to do it. So that's why a lot of people fail on January 10th and they didn't stick to the January 1st deadline or doing the new habit. The one thing that he knows and that he has been able to prove time and time again through his research is that our brain changes when it feels good. So the Tiny Habits framework is something that we use, and I use that with my clients who are trying to build a business. I use that framework to help them create the simple habits so that they can do the work every day, be consistent in their business, be able to accomplish the things that they need to, right? Because all of us know that when we have a goal, there's certain tasks that we need to do day in and day out to get to the goal. As soon as we stop doing the work, then we get farther away from our goal. And in building a business, there's so many different things that you need to do. So I teach my clients not only how to create those tiny habits, but I teach them the basics of creating their business. What should you price yourself at? What is a niche? Because we talk about that, what is it? Should I have one? How do I market myself? How do I work with clients? All of that is a lot of the things that people struggle with. And I take my corporate background and the success that I had in developing multi-million-dollar businesses for other people and growing my own business and now helping individuals do the same for themselves.
So would you say that the philosophy of tiny habits and your experience in the corporate world is what sets you apart from everyone else that's doing coaching?
100%. And I think that for me, I don't teach you anything that hasn't worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give you any tools that are not proven. I've been so fortunate to be able to work in an industry. Most people, when they are in corporate, they're either in sales or in marketing. They're either in the development of business or the running of the business. But I worked for 2 companies throughout my career, and I was fortunate enough that I was exposed to not only the business developing and creating, doing the selling, the acquiring of the business, but I also was trained on how to create the processes and procedures to be able to run that successfully. So I can straddle both of that. I've also, as one of the companies felt very strongly in training all of us executives to really be able to understand marketing, to be able to understand how to be able to appeal to clients and create messaging that works. And again, there's a lot of coaches that do very similar stuff, but my different and the differentiator and what I've seen that works for my clients as well is teaching them that tiny habits and also the mental fitness to create the capacity for them to show up consistently and get the results that they want.
I had a guy on my show that he's an executive coach, I guess is what he called himself. And he started with finding like different ways to make your business actually work. So, you know how people always make excuses. I don't have this specific tool, so I can't get started, and or I've never done that before, so I don't know if I can do it, that kind of thing. Do you get more in depth like that and help them?
Yeah. So, the one thing that we all have in common as humans, whether we're an entrepreneur or working in the corporate world, is that we are always going to have this inner critic or judge. And that inner critic and judge is the one that is always telling us, oh, you could never do that. You're not good enough, or you don't measure up. In addition to that judge, we have 9 other saboteurs. The saboteurs vary from person to person. And those sabotaging behaviors and voices that we have are the ones that keep us from being able to create the daily action or show up in the way that we need to for ourselves, for our life, for our business. For instance, for me, one of my saboteurs, in addition to judging myself and telling, oh, Julie, you're not good enough or whatnot, I have a very high achiever. That's part of my saboteurs. And you would think the high achiever, how would that sabotage you, Julie? Well, if I think I can't do it perfect, I go into a paralysis. I'm like, okay, I don't know. Wait, I need to do it perfect. Maybe I need to learn more about how to do that first. And then when you don't actually do the work, right, then you're not getting the movement and moving ahead. Many of my clients, one of their saboteur that really trips them up is the people pleaser saboteur. The one that is always saying, hey, but you've got to go make dinner for your kids, or, oh, but you have to, please everybody. And when you allow those little saboteurs to get the best of you, then you're not showing up in the way that you need to build the consistent action daily. Business is about having a really clear plan and then working the plan on a daily basis. It's about understanding what your goals are and how you're going to break that down into the actions that you take every day. It's also about creating the type of action that is productive, not something that is just keeping you spinning, but is not really moving you forward and getting clients ultimately.
My biggest problem is impatience. I have kind of stepped back and started over again a couple of times, and that's from taking advice from other people. And I see their success, and I try to follow the same things that they're doing. But yet, if I don't see the results pretty quickly, then I kind of sabotage myself as well. Yeah. How would you help me with my impatience?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little analogy to that imperfection. I didn't learn to swim till I was 14, and then I'm not a very strong swimmer. However, I decided a couple of years ago that I wanted to complete a triathlon. And it's not a very fancy triathlon. But it's a women's triathlon, a sprint triathlon. I don't even know how long we had to swim for, but we were swimming in a pool, not even a big ocean. And when they line you up, and you have to rate yourself as to what type of a swimmer you are. So I wasn't going to rate myself at the bottom because I know more than the doggy paddle, but I wasn't going to rate myself as the top. So I put myself somewhere in the middle of the pack. And as soon as they started and the first people started to go in and swim, I freaked out because I thought, holy cow, these people are Olympic swimmers. Look at them go, right? And I started to become very anxious. And then my friend is like, honey, those people are like the ultra marathoners that, end up first. We're not that. We're the front of the mill. We're here in the middle. And I'm like, oh, okay. Then it got to my turn. I jumped in the pool and I started to swim and I was doing well. And then it happened. I looked to the side and I noticed and I compared myself to the person on the lane next to me. And not only was I watching them go, but I lost the momentum I had. And when we compare in despair, that is exactly what is happening. And what we have to really be able to do is, not beat ourselves up because we're comparing. Oh my God, I was comparing. Now I'm behind. But it's just figure out what our next best step is going to be. And when I started to, okay, fine, I'm not going to watch them. Just one hand, breathe, keep going and do your stroke. And then you stay that and you're so focused on the next best thing that you're moving ahead. And the next thing you know, I was like, oh, I'm done with this. Let me run to my bike and go do my little bike thing. And for most of us, and that's what I want you to notice, is that when you're looking at somebody else's success or how fast they did, or you're doing the same thing they did, right? They say, this is what I did. This is my plan. What works for them, number one, is you don't know what type of background they had. Like when people they say, oh my God, Julie, I could never do what you do. No, you're right. You never had the formal training that I had. You didn't have the experiences that I had. So what may come easy to me may not come easy to you, but find specifically what you're good at and notice, hey, I'm thinking that I'm not good enough. I'm thinking this is not working. And when you become aware of that and you just go back to the next best step, all right, I'm not going to look at them. I'm just going to go back to the plan. This is what I'm supposed to be working on today. I'm supposed to be, meeting with people or networking, whatever it is that's in that plan. When you start to work the plan, then you make that your own and you create your own success. But I think that that's what happens a lot when we compare and despair. We're expecting, the same thing with making a cake, right? Sure, we can replicate a recipe, but your oven is probably very different than my oven. That we may live in different climates as well, altitudes that is also going to affect. So it's very important for you to just notice where you are and figure out what the next best thing is. And when you find yourself starting to compare or think, oh, I can never do this, forget it, this is not working. Stay your course. Notice that you're saying that to yourself and say, I'm thinking that, and this is normal to think that. My brain is telling me. And then you will be able to refocus yourself. And the faster that you learn to get up or the faster you learn to refocus, the more momentum you'll be able to keep up.
I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm probably the most impatient person in the world.
There's nothing wrong with that. And I think that, being aware of that is key. Just say, oh, I'm so impatient. Look at me trying to get this done. But the reality is that, here's the thing. When you're trying to do something quickly, you may not be learning the lessons that need to be in place in order to make it sustainable. And that's what impatience sometimes causes us.
I'm terrible, but I'm trying. At least I'm trying.
And that's how we learn. That's how we learn and we move ahead.
Now, mental health can have a big impact when you're trying to get into entrepreneurship, or your business, what have you. Depression can set in, anxiety, you can name it. Are you able to help people to better, deal with those things?
So one of the two other things that I feel very strongly about is I in addition to the Tiny Habits certification, I am not a mental health professional, but I am certified in cognitive behavioral techniques. I am certified also with mindfulness. I am a mindfulness coach, and I can walk you through learning some of the mindfulness practices that have been proven to help lessen anxiety. The one certification that I'm in the process of completing, and I've done the initial yellow belt training. I'm not a black belt yet, but in mental fitness. And all these certifications and trainings that I do, Kyle, I'm going to tell you why I do them is because I am my own best client. I coach myself in all of this, and I tell my clients, and they know I'm not telling you to do something I haven't done for myself. But when you are and I suffer from depression. I live in the Northeast, and come winter, I really have to be able to deal with how do I still run my business when it's dark and dreary, and I still feel the initial or in the middle of these seasonal depression disorders, and it's a challenge. But there's two things that keep me going: the habits that I create that become so easy to implement, and number two, really managing my mind. And I do that through the mindfulness. I do that also through looking at what my thoughts are, because our thoughts many times, well, not many times, all the times, have an impact on what we feel. Right? Yes, when you are depressed, you also have some chemical imbalance going on, 100%. But our thoughts, like if someone cuts you off in traffic and you think, oh my God, that guy's such a jerk, then you're going to feel that enrage and whatnot. However, that someone cuts you off and you think something different, like, oh, they're in a hurry, I hope everything is okay. What is the feeling that's going to be generated there, right? So it's very important to learn to watch. And this is what mindfulness really does, is being aware what your thoughts are, because then you start to notice, like, what are the emotions? What are the feelings that your thoughts are creating? Because when we are in the middle of a feeling, our feelings typically drive our actions, and then our actions create our results. And that's one of the things that I teach my clients as well. So if you get up in the morning and you're thinking, oh, I'm such a loser, I'm not doing well in my business, right? That's your thought. And you start to feel really inadequate, right? I will never make this. I'm too impatient. I'm terrible, right? That's your thought. Then maybe you have a list of people that you're going to make calls to that are potential clients, but you're not going to feel like it. You're relying on that motivation. That motivation is going to go away because of what you're thinking. And then what's going to happen is you never call those clients. You don't get those new clients. You don't get the income. Your business doesn't move forward, right? So your results then prove your thought correctly. So now enter tiny habits. I teach my clients tiny habits. So the tiny habit, and we create these recipes, right? You don't have to go big, but maybe every night before you finish your work, before you leave your desk, you make a list of the 3 people that you need to contact tomorrow. And that's all you do before you leave your desk. You're not going to pull their phone number. You're not going to do anything. And maybe the tiny habit for the following day, when you sit at your desk and you turn on your computer and that's your anchor moment, all you're going to do is pull up the list from the night before. Your goal is not to call them. Your goal is not to anything other than look at the list. And a lot of times what ends up happening, even if you do that little anchor step and you do that initial step and then you celebrate it, you're like, oh, I looked at my list, good for me, right? Then that's when your brain feels good and it starts to anchor that habit. So now you start to grow and you can say, okay, well, I might as well call one person. I mean, the list is right here, right? And then you create that habitual movement in which is an automation. And then you do the work and you're like, oh, I called one person. Yeah, good for me. I did that. And you start to make those movements forward. So you will start to see like, oh my God. And anytime that you do the work, like, oh, celebrate, like, oh, go me. I made that call. They said, no, thank you. I don't want to work with you. But I wasn't going for the yes. I was going for the call. And you're always going to show up a winner. And that's one of the main components that in this whole process of working with clients, again, you can go buy a book, you can download the course, you can work with the guru that tells you how to market your business. But when it comes right down to it, it's all about you at your desk doing the thing. And if you don't have the habit, if you don't have the support, then that's where really a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck.
Mm. Speaking of steps, can you take us through the steps from the moment you get a client that calls you and say, I need some help? Because I'm sure someone out there has never dealt with it before and they want to know.
Sure. It's very simple. One of the biggest things that I want for people, and this is one of my top values as a person, as a coach, is service. When someone is interested in working with a coach, a business coach, perhaps thinking I may be the right fit for them, my main goal is to really be able to service them. And what I ask is I invite them to what we call a clarity call. A clarity call is where I help them really define and clarify whether or not I'm going to be the right fit. And this is just an opportunity for me to be able to learn what is it that they're doing in their business? What are they looking to accomplish? What are some of the challenges that they have? And then where are they looking to be? And we talk about how we may work together. If, and I know, obviously, I've been very successful in growing businesses, but also working with clients and seeing the results for them. But one of the biggest things that I want is for the person to know that working with a coach is an investment, but also it could create, just like if you're investing in something for your retirement, it's going to make that payoff. And I want people to know that when they work with me, it's going to have that payoff. So we talk about how does it look to work with me? I have different programs, that may meet the different needs of people. You can work with me one-to-one. People can work with me in a group. I also have free programs as well, because not everybody may be in a position in which they can necessarily make an investment in working with me. But I do want to help people. And last but not least, if I'm not the right fit, and I will be the first one to say, I'm not the right fit, I want to send you or suggest different, people within my network that I feel that may be better suited to work with you in that respect. Because ultimately, if one person is doing well, and I say, Kyle, I would love to work with you, but maybe you need someone that's better matched to what you're looking for. I don't have that, extensive experience in that area. And that's where you really want to, like, if you said, I want to do a video, I'm like, I'm not a video coach, right? I can recommend, I can teach you the basics that I know, but I'm not like the YouTube person that like knows all the editing ins and outs. So if I send you to that person and you're successful, you're going to be able to then turn around and continue to touch the lives of somebody else through the work that you do. So my main goal is to help people clarify what they want and see if we're a right fit.
Well, God forbid this ever happens again, but did you have people trying to start businesses during the lockdowns?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I know a lot of people that started a business and I was one of them. I was laid off right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I had already been thinking of doing this full time. I had taken on a few clients, and I knew, like, okay, I like doing this. I like coaching. Eventually I'm going to do this full time. But that's when I took the leap. I said, all right, I'm not going to call a headhunter. I'm not going to go and post my resume online. And there were a couple of people that when they found out that I had been laid off, offered me to partner with them in their companies. But I wanted to give this a try. Yeah. Because I owed it to myself. I also owed it to my husband and the life that we want to continue to have for ourselves, with the freedom that allows us to not only be able to travel when we want, give to our families, have the time to invest in our time together, but also give back in our community. And this is what my business allows me to do. And I did it through the pandemic, and it's still, something that we work at every day, and it continues to grow.
I've talked to some therapists that they had to basically learn some new things because this was something that we hadn't dealt with before.
Yeah, for sure.
Where was there any new skills that you had to learn in order to deal with this?
I think that the biggest thing for me during the pandemic, and this is really, last year is when I went through the Tiny Habits coaching. Again, the cognitive behavioral techniques, holistic mindfulness, all of that was part of what I already had gone through in certifications and trainings. But Tiny Habits, I realized that there was a piece missing when it came to doing the work, right? I knew how to manage my brain in essence. I knew how to be able to hold space and know that, right? You can feel elated and sad at the same time. And I think that a lot of times people don't realize that multiple emotions can live in the same spot. And once I did the Tiny Habits training, a lot of it started to click for me personally, and I was able to then help my clients at a higher level. But it's very important for individuals to really be cognizant of what do they want specifically, because many people say, oh, I want to have a successful business. But what does that mean? Success could be making $50,000 to some people, to some is 250, to some is making over 7 figures. And it's very important for you to define that and then create the mechanism, and then you reverse engineer to how you're going to get to that success that you want.
What's been the most difficult client that you've had so far?
The most difficult client is the one that I said yes to and knew that we weren't a right fit, because I wanted to help them. And I thought, fine, I will help you, even though I knew they weren't going to do the work. And I think that that's the challenge, that as a coach, I'm not a teacher grading you on the work that you're doing. As a coach, I can give you options and reflect to you. I can, give you a different perspective. I can share, hey, these are the tools that people use. This is what I use. This is how you would use this, and help you define how you're going to implement that or not. But when you have someone that is not invested, and again, I think that many coaches do this, that we want to save, we want to help, but the person has to also be invested in helping themselves. And that was one of the challenges, because, and I will say this particular person, they, from, and again, we're friendly. It's not like, oh my God, this is terrible, you didn't help me. But, we did a small amount of work. This person has worked with multiple coaches, and from being friendly, I know that they're still not where they want to be. But I think that there's resistance. When you resist doing, in this, again, tiny habits, right? When you resist showing up and being the consistent person in your action, then it makes it very difficult for you to get the traction you want.
Would you say that's been the biggest hurdle that you've ever had in your life, or is there something else you can talk about?
The biggest hurdle in my life, I think, would probably be definitely my mental health. And I think that, there's things that and again, I've always considered myself to be someone who is incredibly blessed, incredibly fortunate. I had some wonderful parents and mentors and grandparents and teachers, people that poured into me. I always had a roof over my head. I had an education. But there's things that have happened in my life. For instance, I grew up until the age of 10. My mom is from El Salvador. My dad, he was born in New York, and he met my mom, and they lived in El Salvador. They divorced when I was 5. But when we were in El Salvador, we lived in a country that was going through war. Mm-hmm. As a child, living in a world with war is not easy. And it's sort of like we are this, if you think this is a box, I'm the box, and then I have this war experience that I put inside, and then I'm like, okay, fine, I'll just kind of adapt and move on. Then you have other things that happen and all these things. And through the pandemic, I found that things that I was able to mask, or, maybe go to the gym and work through, or, even maybe, have a bowl of ice cream or whatever, those behaviors weren't helping me to deal with the anxiety or the feelings that were going on there. So for me, the biggest challenge is to also be able to know that, hey, there's something wrong with you. You need to deal with these emotions. Number two, you're not broken. You're human. We all have these things. Number three, really doing the actual work. One of the biggest changes that I did for my life, and I still can't believe I did that, is I don't watch the news anymore. And I have, for the entire life of me, been a news junkie. I was the person who devoured papers and I would go and do research and on multiple issues. But I realized that for me was not serving me anymore, and that I have no control over the world or over what's going on, and the only thing that I can really manage and control is me and what is going on inside me and how I decide to show up and the actions that I take. So that was one of the biggest things and obstacles that I think that I've gone through. And I've been working with a coach and someone who's helping me process some of and it's not big trauma, it's trauma with a little t, but that has created some of that inner turmoil that sometimes shows up in our life.
Some folks will look at someone like you and they'll see a strong person, but they don't realize some of the struggles you personally go through. And I have talked to coaches that say, yes, I have a coach to coach me. Look at everything I'm bombarded with all the time, and sometimes I need a little help.
Absolutely. Coaches need coaches, and I will tell you that currently I am working with 3.
But that just shows your dedication to what you're doing, and you believe in what you're doing.
I believe in what I do, and I believe, more importantly, that I am showing up on a daily basis, not only for myself, but I am also showing up for the people that trust me enough to say, I need your help. And I want to be the best version of myself, for my husband, for my family, but also for those people that I work with, because I believe in their dreams and I believe that they can get there. I mostly, not all my clients are women, but mostly work with women. And one of the things that I am committed to is that 51% of small business owners are women, but over 88% of them are not making enough of an income to say that they can make a profitable business. They make under $100,000, and $30,000 of that, and you might as well go and some of these are highly educated, intelligent women, but they don't have the right tools. And what I want to do is empower them and help them believe in themselves that they can do it. And not just the women, but the men as well that I work with.
I know you can't really compare everyone because the goals are different, but what would you say would be the biggest triumph of all your clients?
It's interesting, because I think that with every client, there has been so many amazing wins. Like, I see all these faces, but I would have to say there is one particular young woman who I have worked with, and she had been running her business for, I don't know, maybe 10 years. She was a professional. She left corporate America when she had her kids, and she was home, and she working as a graphic designer. And she would do graphic design at home. And as the pandemic, was in the middle of, I guess 2021, her kids had grown up at this point. There was really no need for her to be home as long as, and her husband said, hey, why don't you get a job? And she said, well, I'm a graphic designer. I have a business. And he's saying, No, you have a hobby. And again, this didn't necessarily need additional income, but he just felt like she needed to get out. And that was a blow to her. And she's like, but I don't want to work outside the home. I like having my business. And she had some clients that she's worked with, but she wasn't running her business like a business.
Mm.
So we started working together, and then this is someone again that has dealt with through some anxiety as well, some second guessing herself. But we started to really go through and evaluate, what do you do, what do you offer, who do you work with, and started to work together. And all through the process of working together, her sons, teenagers, would kind of laugh at some of the efforts that she was doing, and it would really hurt her feelings. And we would kind of go through and really created a master plan. And her husband's like, just, you know what, I don't care, just go and get a job at Target, get out of the house. And she's like, no, this is my calling, I love doing this, I want to help people. Anyway, so fast forward, through us working together for some time, she started to get traction and started to get clients. And in January, this past year, at the end of January, she sent me a text, and she said, I just did my operational review. I mean, I teach my clients to do this, right? You need to look at your numbers, if not weekly, at least monthly. And you need to be aware of how much money you're bringing in. Is that cohesive to the amount that it's your goal for the month, for the week? And she said, I just did my operational review for the month of January. And in the month of January, I earned more than I did all of last year.
Wow.
Month of January. So to me, and again, it's not something that happened overnight. It's something that it took, there were times in which she would feel so deflated and felt like, oh my God, this is not happening fast enough. I better show my husband I can do this. Otherwise he's going to really, I don't know, whatever. Right. But it is the showing up every day, we would meet. And then I said, okay, this is what you're going to work on today. This is what you should be doing. And she would go, she would do it. She would, work on the stuff, implement the stuff, just make the decisions for herself. And that created that action for her, and that created the results for her that she wanted.
Oh, wow. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah.
No.
It inspires me all the time, and anytime. And I will say, I go back and I have the screenshot on my phone, because every time that maybe I talk to a person and they say, you know what, it's okay, I don't want to work with you, it's not the right time, I go back and I look at that text and I remind myself that it's not about me, it's about the person that is willing to put in the work. And if I'm not the right fit, it's okay. Because just because maybe you're not in a position to be able to work with a coach, doesn't mean that I wouldn't be able to help you with something that I offer free, or there's not something that maybe you need that I can send to you that might help you along the way. And when people say no to you, this is a lot of what happens with coaches. People end up making it about them. It's not about you, it's about where that person is. And be knowledgeable that it's their journey. All you're doing is offering something. We had to buy a refrigerator in the pandemic. We had a need because our refrigerator went out and all the shelves broke.
Oh,
Well,
no.
guess what? If you had offered me a refrigerator when I didn't need a refrigerator, I probably would have thought, well, that's dumb, I don't need a refrigerator. But when I had the need, I didn't care how much, because I needed to get a refrigerator in my house, and I needed to get one that fit the hole in there, because we have a very particular spot for the refrigerator, right? And that's the same thing with our business. And that's the same thing with the offers that we do. We're not selling something as tangible as a refrigerator, but know that when someone understands that they have a need and a desire, and then you really communicate to them that, hey, I have that thing that fits that spot and it's going to get you the result that you want, then they are going to be able to say, I need you.
I'm going to ask something that's kind of on a personal level for myself.
Sure.
I know there's going to be some other people out there like me. You got someone who has disabilities, and some things are going to be a little bit more challenging for them. Do you work with people like that?
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned this, but my career started as a teacher.
Oh, okay.
So I am, and for many years, the companies that I worked for are educational companies. So I know that, and even in the programming that I create, whether it be my group coaching, my courses, or my one-to-one, I know that we're all very different learners. And this is why the tools that I provide to my clients are going to be able to address your needs. Not everybody learns auditorily. Not everybody needs to read it. Not everybody needs to sit down and talk about it. So I'm going to give you multiple points of entry of the information so that you can process it. This is the other thing too. Even when you're working with me in a group coaching setting, I offer what I call my SOS calls, in which you get an SOS call with me that's just you and I. And if you don't use it for the week, then you can bank it. But the main reason I do that is because sometimes we just need to ask the teacher, hey, I didn't get that. Can you explain it again? Or can you show me a different way of doing it? Because I know that when I first learned algebra, the teacher that I had did not teach me algebra in a way that I understood it, and I failed. But when I went to summer school, I had a teacher that taught it in a complete different way. And guess what? I got it. And that's exactly what happens with all of us. We need to be able to have someone coaches and teaches and help us in a way that is relevant to us, and it's going to help us get the traction we want.
And how about those with the physical disabilities?
I'm sorry?
The physical disabilities?
Yeah, so physical disabilities, I mean, there's certainly a lot of different things that I do. It depends on the disability, but I will also be honest. If I feel that I know a very gifted coach, she is legally blind and she specializes in working with individuals with disabilities. So if what I offer is not the best fit, I am always going to be the first one to tell you, because for me, that's my service to you as an individual. And it may not be the service that somebody else gets from me, but I want to make sure that you get what is in your best interest.
You've been incredible today, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a website that folks can go to?
Absolutely. So people can find me in all of the socials, Julie DeLuca Collins, or you can also go to my website, which is goconfidentlycoaching.com.
Goconfidentlycoaching.com. Okay, I'm going to put the links in the description so folks make it easier for folks to go to. And thank you for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. This has been a fun conversation. You're a great interviewer. I appreciate you. This is so great.
Well, thank you. And I also want to thank all of you out there. If you happen by the channel, this is your first time, thank you for stopping by. And I hope you'll come back. Please subscribe. For my regulars out there, thank you for your support. I mean, I know I say it over and over again, but you don't know how much I appreciate it, because it's your support that makes it possible for me to do this. And so until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network